You had the list written, you had the plan ready, you even had the time, and you still didn't do it. You opened your phone instead, or you cleaned something that didn't need cleaning, or you just sat there, aware of everything you were avoiding, watching yourself avoid it, almost like you were a stranger observing your own life from across the room. And at some point you thought, why am I like this? Not dramatically, just quietly. Like a question you've asked so many times, it stopped feeling like a question and started feeling like a conclusion. Like the answer was already decided. The answer being, you are just someone who doesn't follow through. You are just someone who can't seem to do what other people seem to do without thinking. You are just, and this is the word that follows so many people like a shadow, lazy. I want to stop right there. Not to argue with you, not to give you a pep talk, but to tell you that the word lazy is doing something very specific in your life. It's ending the conversation before it starts. It's replacing a real explanation with a moral judgment. And the moment you accept that word as the truth about who you are, you stop looking for what's actually going on. And what's actually going on is real, it's specific, and it has nothing to do with your character. Before I get into it, I want to say something. If you have something in your life you've never been able to explain, a pattern that keeps repeating, a struggle that nobody around you seems to understand, write it in the comments. Tell me what you're dealing with, because I read those comments, and your story might become the next video. Not a general video, one made specifically to help you and everyone else sitting in the same place you are right now. So let's talk about what's actually happening. There's a belief most of us absorbed somewhere along the way, not from one conversation, from 100 small moments, from being compared to a sibling who seemed to just handle things, from a teacher who said you weren't working to your potential, from watching other people move through their days with what looked like ease while you felt like you were wading through something invisible. The belief is simple. If you want something, you do it. Motivation follows desire. Action follows intention. And if that equation isn't working in your life, then you must not want it enough. You must be choosing the easier thing every time. You must lack discipline. But here is the part that doesn't fit. You do want it. You've always wanted it. You think about what you need to do constantly. You think about it while you're doing other things. You think about it while you're avoiding it. You make the lists. You set the reminders. You have the conversation with yourself the night before where you say tomorrow is different, and you actually believe it. Not performatively. You genuinely believe tomorrow will feel different, and then it doesn't. And the gap between wanting and doing stays exactly as wide as it was. And you're left with this quiet, exhausting confusion that nobody around you seems to share. Because if it's not about wanting, what is it about? That's the right question. And the answer starts inside your body, not your character. Your nervous system is not a background process. It's not something running quietly while the real you gets on with things. It is the operating system underneath everything. It governs how safe you feel from moment to moment. It governs how much energy your body decides to make available. It governs whether your brain is in a state where clear thinking, planning, starting, and finishing things is even biologically possible. And when your nervous system shifts into a particular state, everything above it gets affected. Your thinking changes. Your sense of what's possible changes. Your relationship to effort changes. Not because you changed your mind, because the system changed its setting. Here is the setting that matters for this conversation. Your nervous system has a built-in threat response. Think of it like a smoke alarm inside your body. When it detects danger, it goes off. And when it goes off, your body does something very specific. It redirects all available resources towards survival. Heart rate changes. Muscles prepare. Digestion slows down. And the part of your brain responsible for making plans, feeling hope, starting new things, following through on decisions, that part goes quiet. Because in a real emergency, the last thing you need is to be thoughtful and strategic. You need to react. And this system is not a design flaw. It kept human beings alive for hundreds of thousands of years. It is one of the most elegant biological mechanisms that exists. The problem is that this system cannot read context. It cannot distinguish between a physical threat and an emotional one. It cannot tell the difference between a predator and a pile of unopened emails. To your nervous system, overwhelm is overwhelm. Uncertainty is uncertainty. Threat is threat. And if you have spent a long stretch of your life, whether that's months or years or most of your childhood, in environments that were emotionally unpredictable, or high pressure, or chronically uncertain, your nervous system may have learned something. It may have learned that the world is not a safe place to be relaxed in. And so it stopped fully turning the alarm off even when nothing was obviously wrong. It got activated, and it stayed there, not broken, stuck. And there is a real difference between those two things. When your nervous system is stuck in that alert state, your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is conserving energy. It is keeping you close to stillness. It is making big movements and bold decisions feel like risks. Because in a real threat situation, moving fast and taking big swings are dangerous. So the system slows you down. It narrows what feels possible. It makes starting things feel like stepping off a ledge. And from the outside, to a teacher, a parent, a manager, even to you watching yourself, that looks like one thing: laziness. But it isn't. It is your body running a survival program in the wrong situation, using a tool that was designed for a different world, a world where the threats were real, immediate, and physical. Not abstract, ongoing, and invisible. There is a framework in psychology called the window of tolerance. It's a way of describing the zone where your nervous system is settled enough that functioning normally is actually possible. Picture a river with two banks. When you're inside those banks, the water flows. You can think, you can start things, you can make decisions and follow through on them. Life feels workable. But when the water rises too high, you get flooded. Too much input. Too much feeling, everything overwhelming and nothing manageable. And when the water drops too low, everything goes flat, gray, still. Like someone turned the volume down on your entire life. Nothing urgent enough to move toward. Nothing interesting enough to hold attention. Nothing that feels like it matters enough to be worth the effort. And that low water state, that shutdown, is what most people have been calling lazy their whole lives. In themselves and in others. What's important to understand is that the shutdown is not the opposite of stress. It is still a stress response. When the flooding gets to be too much, the system doesn't resolve it. It suppresses it. It goes quiet not because things got better, but because things got too much. And that quiet, that flatness, that inability to move, that is not peace. That is your body's last resort protection mechanism. It is the circuit breaker tripping because the electrical load got too high. And you cannot force a tripped circuit back on by wanting it more. You have to address the load. Now I want to introduce you to something called vantage sensitivity. Vantage sensitivity is a concept that describes how some people are neurologically more responsive to their environment than others. Not more anxious, not more fragile, more responsive. The everyday analogy I find most useful is the difference between a standard microphone and a studio-grade condenser microphone. The standard microphone picks up what's directly in front of it. The studio microphone picks up everything, every subtle frequency, every ambient sound in the room, every tiny variation in tone. That condenser microphone is not broken. It is not oversensitive in a bad way. It is more precise. It captures more. But put it in a loud, uncontrolled environment and it distorts. Not because it failed. Because it was built for a different kind of space. People with high vantage sensitivity pick up more signal from their environment. More emotional information from the people around them. More unspoken tension. More of the gap between what someone says and what they mean. More of what the room is carrying even before anyone has said a word. And that level of constant input takes energy. Real, measurable, biological energy. When your nervous system is processing more than average, it requires more recovery than average, more intentional stillness, more space between demands. Not because you're weak, because you're running a more intensive process. And when that recovery doesn't happen, when the input keeps coming and the system never gets to decompress, the body makes a choice: conservation. Slow down. Shut down. I also want you to understand something called low latent inhibition. Latent inhibition is your brain's filter. The mechanism that looks at incoming information and decides what's relevant and what can be ignored. High latent inhibition means the filter is strong. You walk into a coffee shop and you hear the conversation at your table. The rest is background noise your brain decided wasn't necessary. Low latent inhibition means the filter is thin. You walk into the same coffee shop and you notice the conversation 2 tables over and the particular tone of the music and the way the person at the counter seems like they're having a bad day and the flickering of the light in the corner, and all of it is arriving at more or less the same priority level. Nothing fully filters out. Everything registers. This is not a disorder. In the right environment and with the right understanding, low latent inhibition is connected to unusual creative ability, to the capacity to make connections other people don't see, to finding solutions in unlikely places, to genuine originality. But in an environment that never slows down, in a life with no space for that level of input to settle, it becomes the mechanism of exhaustion. Your brain is doing more processing than the people around you, even in supposedly neutral situations. A normal Tuesday is a high-load day for a system like yours. And after enough high-load days without enough recovery, the system does what systems do. It shuts down non-essential functions. Starting new things becomes non-essential. Taking risks becomes non-essential. And the behavior that results looks, from every external angle, like laziness. Here is the framework I want you to hold on to. I think of it as the antenna and the generator. Some people are built more like generators. They produce energy internally. They refuel through action. They thrive on forward momentum. Give them a goal and they run toward it. The environment can be loud, unpredictable, imperfect, and they still produce. Other people are built more like antennas. They pick up signal from everything around them. Their responsiveness to environment, to people, to meaning, to tone, is their core function. And antennas need different conditions than generators do. An antenna placed in a field of interference doesn't work well, not because it's a bad antenna, because the signal-to-noise ratio is too high. Reduce the interference, and that same antenna can pick up things from a distance that a generator would never notice at all. You may have spent your whole life being evaluated by generator standards. How much did you produce today? How fast did you move? How consistently did you perform regardless of conditions? And those are the wrong metrics for an antenna. They will never accurately measure what you are actually capable of. And they will keep producing the same result. A daily sense of falling short, a deepening belief that something is wrong with you, and a nervous system that never gets the signal that it's safe to open back up. So what actually works? Not as a routine, not as a disciplined protocol, as a set of design choices made by someone who understands their own system. The first design choice is what I'd call the near approach. When your nervous system has learned to associate a certain task or environment with discomfort or threat, forcing full engagement creates resistance. The system treats the approach itself as the danger. The near approach means getting physically or mentally close to the task without demanding a performance from yourself. You open the document. You don't write. You put the book on the desk. You don't read. You sit in the chair where you do your work. You don't start the work. You are simply teaching your system through repeated, gentle exposure that proximity to this thing does not equal danger. That getting close is safe. And over time, the resistance softens, not because you pushed through it, because you slowly stopped confirming that it was something to fear. The second design choice is what I call signal breathing. There is a nerve in your body called the vagus nerve. Think of it as the off switch for your threat response, a direct communication line between your body and the part of your nervous system that controls whether the alarm stays on or begins to settle. You can activate this nerve deliberately. The simplest method is a double inhale followed by a slow exhale. Breathe in through your nose. Take a second smaller breath in on top of the first. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for roughly twice as long as the combined inhale. 2 or 3 of these sends a measurable physiological signal to your system, not a message in words, a message in the body's own language, a signal that says the threat has passed. It is safe to come back online. This is not relaxation. This is direct input into a biological system that doesn't respond to willpower, but does respond to breath. The third design choice is environment calibration. Your nervous system responds to your physical environment before you consciously process it. Cluttered, visually noisy, unpredictable spaces raise the system's background alert level. They add to the signal your antenna is already trying to process. Quieter, ordered, consistent environments reduce that load. This isn't about being fussy. It is about understanding that your nervous system performs differently in different conditions and designing your environment around the conditions where it functions best. A photographer doesn't complain that they need good light to take a good photograph. They just find good light. You need certain conditions to access your full functioning. Find them. Build them. Stop apologizing for needing them. The fourth design choice is what I call the single closed loop. One of the least obvious things that drains a nervous system is accumulated incompletion. Every task started and abandoned, every commitment made and quietly dropped, every intention set and never followed through on, including small private ones you made only to yourself. These stay open in some part of your system. They run in the background like processes on a computer that nobody closed. And they take memory. they take processing power. They contribute to the low-grade sense that you are always behind, always failing, always carrying something unresolved. A single closed loop means choosing one thing per day small enough that you can actually finish it and finishing it completely. Not the most important thing. Not the most impressive thing. The smallest completable thing. Because each real completion sends a counter signal. A piece of evidence that contradicts the story. Evidence that you can finish things. That things can end. That you are someone who follows through. And evidence, accumulated slowly over time, changes the story more reliably than motivation ever could. Here is the warning I want to give you. Because nobody usually does. When you begin to work with your nervous system, instead of against it, when you start making these design choices consistently, one of the first things that often happens is that it gets harder before it gets easier. Not much harder, but noticeably. When a system that has been in shutdown begins to come back online, the first thing it does is start to feel things that the shutdown was suppressing. You might notice more emotion than usual, more awareness of what you've been carrying, more of the things you've been protecting yourself from feeling. And this can feel like it's going wrong, like you were better off before, like you broke something. You didn't. What you're feeling is movement, and movement after a long stillness is uncomfortable. That is how you know it's real. The discomfort is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that the system is thawing. And on the other side of that, thaw is the version of you that functions the way you always suspected you could if you could just figure out what was getting in the way. And I want to say this clearly because I think it matters. The sensitivity that makes this hard is not a flaw you need to fix. It is the same mechanism that makes you perceptive in ways other people aren't. The same system that shuts down under poor conditions is the one that picks up nuance, that reads situations other people miss, that connects ideas across distances other minds don't travel. The same depth that makes recovery harder is the depth that makes your thinking, your work, your connection with other people actually mean something. These are not separate things. They are the same thing. You do not get one without the other. The question is never how do I become less sensitive. The question is how do I build a life where this sensitivity is an asset instead of a liability? And the answer to that question starts with understanding, which you now have more of than you did when this video started. So let me give you something to come back to. Not a list to follow. Just a few lines to say to yourself on the days when the old story comes back. On the days when you've been still and the voice starts its routine again. You can say this quietly. Just to yourself. My nervous system learned this to protect me. It did what it was designed to do. I am not broken. I am not lazy. I am someone who is learning what conditions I actually need to function. I am not behind. I am building something real, slowly, from the inside out. And today, even this counts as part of that. If this video names something for you, something you've been carrying without the right words, I put together a free guide that goes deeper into the nervous system design principles we covered today. It's practical, it's plain, and it's in the description below. No catch. Just a resource I made because I think you deserve more than a single video when the thing you're dealing with has been with you for a long time. And if you want to keep going, if this opens something and you want to understand more about why people who process the world deeply often end up feeling the most alone in it, the next video is already there for you. It goes into that pattern specifically. And I think if this one landed for you, that one will feel like the next right piece. You stayed. That matters more than you know.